Good morning, everyone. It's the first time we've been broadcasting from the Zendo for several months, so thank you for your patience in putting our technology together. Should I be looking that way? Where's the camera? Just that one? Okay. All right. Okay, got it. Okay, so it's my pleasure today to introduce Reverend Jushin Stephyn Butcher, who started his Buddhist journey over 25 years ago in the Tibetan tradition. He found his way to Hokyoji, where he became a student of Dokai Georgesen, that's me. Jushin received jukai in 2013 and ordination in 2017, and I imagine he's going to be updating his bio here. It does not include that he and I did the Dharma transmission ceremony 2 days ago. So he's currently the Hokyoji, you got to update your bio here, is currently a Hokyoji's board treasurer. He hosts a sitting group on the banks of the Chuptank River in Cambridge, Maryland, where he resides with his husband, dog, chickens, and garden. So I will turn it over to you, Jushin, and I'll look forward to hearing what you'd like to say.
Thank you, Dokai. Everyone, you seated? It's good to see everyone in the Zoom-do. It's been an exciting week here at Hokyoji. We have our new resident manager, Gage, and resident manager assistant, Noah.
Let's show a
Yeah.
picture of those guys. Okay, I even got a picture of our two new residents. That's Gage over there. And that's, are you coming through on the screen?
Yep.
There we go. Okay.
And Kato's here too.
Oh, yeah, Cato.
Yeah.
Cato's here. He assisted me in the Dharma transmission ceremony. Is that about right?
Yeah.
A little closer to the edge, please.
Closer to
There we go.
Okay.
So very exciting, and it's been a lot of fun, mostly because now I've got to go to the Safe House twice for pizza. So that's really sort of that's probably the best part of the whole thing. I wanted to start us off this morning with just a little talk, and then hopefully we'll add everyone else's voices to the discussion. Sometimes I think it's good to go back to first principles and sort of think about the things that you think are true, maybe not ontologically true. Sometimes that's a tricky topic to know what the true is, but we can sometimes at least find good instrumental truths, so things that help us along the way. And for Dewey, something is instrumentally true if it helps you, and if it doesn't, it can't. It's not true. So others describe some of these things in other ways, and some people vibe with those ways, and some people don't vibe with those ways. So if you don't vibe with the way I describe these things, that's fine, and we can talk about different ways of talking about these things. So I always like to start with the Buddha's two arrows, the simile of the two arrows. So there's two similes involving arrows. The one only has one arrow, and that's where basically the Buddha is talking about why you don't need to know everything. There's only certain things you need to know on the path, and basically it's the one where it's as if somebody gets shot with an arrow, and before the surgeon removes the arrow, he's like, who shot the arrow? And what clan was he? And what class was he? And what's the arrow made out of? And it's like, yeah, you don't need to know all of that. We just need to get the arrow out of you. The two arrows talks more about that although our lives in Hamlet's words, the slings and arrows of outrageous misfortune throws things our way. That's the first arrow. That the second arrow of complaining about them, thinking about them, prevaricating about them, being dramatic about them, adds extra. There's sort of this extra layer of suffering that is, the pain may or may not be avoidable, so the first arrow may or may not be avoidable. And, but the second arrow almost certainly is. Now, when it comes to the first arrow, pain, or maybe control, or the things that just happen, I think there's a lot of disagreement about what is pain, what the pain points are, how we might fix the pain points, and even when we agree about the problems of the world, and we just say when we're talking about a lot of the pains are the problems of the world, but also in our lives, that when we talk about them and identify them, we don't all agree how to solve those problems. And I think that's fine. Reasonable people can disagree about that. I think a good starting point are the precepts. So Gage and I were actually joking about the iffy echoes of the agricultural revolution, echoing 10,000 years later, and whether we wouldn't maybe have been better all just staying like in small groups of 30 hunter-gatherers. That could be a debate for a different time. But since we are now with higher population densities and all we have, I think maybe the precepts, that's a good place to start to sort of avoid creating pain for others. Certainly the Eightfold Path, parts of the Eightfold Path are a good way for us to sort of all try and get along as we do actually try and solve personal and other problems. But I think that for the second one, there may be fewer ways of solving those problems, not fewer methods. I think there are a lot of different methods, but I think that sort of identifying the clear challenge and addressing it is, there are limited ways, but there's a lot of different ways of addressing it. So there's a lot of methods that fall within that. And I think something, so it was funny, I was telling them, I was in the car in Maryland, it must have been 2 or 3 weeks ago now. And this ad comes on the radio. And the guy starts saying, well, you try to get that promotion and you get the promotion and it doesn't work out, or your spouse leaves you and your children do this and do that, and it's challenging and irritating, or maybe you don't get the promotion. Just life is full of this frustration and stuff. I'm like, this guy's talking about the second noble truth. And then he goes, and the solution is Jesus. I go, but you stole that from us. Wait a minute, stay in your lane. Jesus is about original sin. You can't take suffering from us. That's the Buddhist thing. But actually this was a big thing. It's probably not an accident, I don't know. The originator of the Stoic school of philosophy, Zeno, I think it was a Zeno somewhere, about 300 BC, 326. And Alexander the Great had reached India by that time, and his army had mutinied and said, no, this is too much, and they came back. But he had run into Buddhists and Jains. They think they ran into Buddhists and Jains. So from the Stoic school, we get Seneca. Seneca's we suffer more in our imagination. Marcus Aurelius talks about suffering twice. So there's maybe 3 arrows. So the actual thing hasn't happened yet, but we think it's going to. So we shoot ourselves in the foot with an arrow. Then the actual arrow hits us, and then we are suffering from the arrowhead. So there's up to a third arrow. So all of this is just sort of a way of saying that life is super messy. Also, this is always a useful thing I find from the Stoics is worry or preparation. It's okay to prepare for things. So talking about suffering twice, it's okay to prepare for things, but worry isn't prepare. Worrying isn't preparation. So if you can do something about it, then you can do something about it, but if you can't, you can't. Of course, it's all easier said than done, and the Buddha said this, right? He goes, this is really hard and subtle, and I don't think a lot of people are going to get it. And then Indra appeared and said, well, there are going to be a few. So if we know all of this, if we know there are these two arrows, why can't we just arrange things? Like, why can't we just well, there are these two arrows, and I know this. And I can just do the things. All of us have, we just start those exercise programs we want, and we just all diet, and we all eat the right things, and we exercise. We do all the things we're supposed to do. So why can't we, we should just be able to do this. Arrange everything in nice, neat boxes. But so, and this isn't in Stoicism, and I think this is where I'm sort of then not convinced that the Stoics and the Buddhists met, because I think that the next part sort of comes from, is only in Buddhism, and that is, we're not the way we appear to be to ourselves. We're not merely selves in this weird, hostile world. So that would be weird. Like if we were, that would be mean. I don't know. And if you believe in a creator God or not, but it's like, okay, we are selves, but now you are, ghosts walking around in a meat shell, in a meat suit, and just everything you try to do doesn't work out the way you want. And the you that is the you, maybe a self, it doesn't change. But in the meantime, you're stubbing your toe and cursing, and things don't turn out the way you want. And I think that would sort of be worse if that were true. And there's sort of this view I always sometimes say that things hinge on prepositions. So this is a mode of thought where we are in the world. We're merely in the world. And I think this is a common philosophical point. It seems to be the three big religions. I think it was true of the Greeks. It was true of others. That however you think about it, a soul or whatever, we're just in the world. And I think it's a little, but it was certainly true of the Brahmins. It's a little bit dodgy as to whether the early Buddhist texts they're trying to sort of get out of that, but may have crept back in later. In that, no, in fact, the Buddha said, you're just part of the causes and conditions. You're not special. You have no privileged vantage point there. And in fact, you are of the world. You are very much of the world. You're subject to causes and conditions. And these causes and conditions, certainly the Buddhist texts do a great job. It's sort of that somebody was able to sort of introspect this. I don't think the Buddha could even have guessed how true and wild and wacky it truly is. You are not looking out of your eyes. It appears that you are looking out of your eyes, and we can see in the Buddhist scriptures, the text that they talk about being a mirror and you just reflect, and maybe the goal is just to reflect stuff. But that's not what's happening at all. Your brain is literally, so there's a philosophical thing that says we're all living in a simulation. And I don't know about that philosophical point. They're talking about we all live in a computer simulation, but we actually all do live in a simulation. And that simulation is your world. Uchiyama Roshi talks about the fact that when you're born, your world is born with you. And when you die, your world dies with you. And that is your simulation. Your brain is literally creating the world. This image, what we perceive to be out here, is actually happening in here. And your senses are actually just error correction on that. And it's good error correction, because if this simulation were arbitrary, so by saying it's a simulation, I don't mean it's arbitrary, because that wouldn't have been so good for evolution. We want things to sort of roughly match. And there is something actually there. But, evolution did not see fit to give us the full range of color vision. We don't see infrared. I think cats do. We don't sense electricity. I think sharks do. So, we only needed what we needed for evolution's purposes. If we can, it doesn't really work that way. We can talk about it that way. So we're a part of nature. We're of the world. And I think then this is where the Chinese influence on Buddhism gets super strong. It changes the texture. Because I think even in certainly in the texts, I don't think this is true just of the people in general, socially. There is a sense that existence is a grand mistake, and we're all supposed to reach nirvana at some point, and this nirvana in certain developments is, well, it literally means extinguish, and it's that it's the end of suffering and end of everything, but depending on the teachings, it's sort of like existence is a mistake, the world's a dumpster fire, and it's best if we all just it's best if we all just leave. Or the bodhisattva is like, make sure everyone gets out first and then you leave. But I think the Taoist influence softens that a lot. And to me, it makes it a lot more palatable. Because it does with this emphasis on nature. That we're part of the world, we're of the world, subject to causes and conditions, and that's sort of that's, and it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. But if we go back to the idea of Greek philosophy, and I think to a certain extent Buddhist philosophy started in general. It wasn't this kind of academic thing. It was, how do we engage? How do we live a life that leads to flourishing? So you have a philosophy of life, and that leads to sort of human flourishing. So back to sort of causes and conditions then, back to suffering, the issue a lot is control. So we can think of the pain and suffering as being what can we control, what can't we control. Often what is what we can control and not control in the present moment. And I think the Navy SEAL credo is something along the lines of, what do I know and what can I do in the present moment? For the Stoics, who are more Stoic probably than the Zen Buddhists, not only so their dictum is amor fati, so love your fate. Whatever is happening, love it. They push it further than that. I think it's Epictetus who says, you should love what's happening to you as if you wanted it. It's like, whatever's happening, pretend it's like what you planned all along. And that's a pretty big stretch. But remember, we did say at the beginning, the Buddha says, this is hard. This is hard. If it were easy, it would, everyone would be doing it. And so it really is, everything hinges on, I think, this control, because you can think of clinging as control, attachment as control, and then you can sort of see in Zen that there's not, we shouldn't not cry. So the saying is, crying without getting carried away by tears, laughing without getting carried away by laughter. So we can have our lives, it's just like, don't be extra. don't, sort of don't be drama queens and kings. And going sort of one step further into that, I think that sort of again our planning brain sort of got in the way, that I think how we can approach that, the issues we have with control and the suffering that leads to, is looking at the difference between carpentry and carpenters and farmers and farming. So maybe not modern farming though, because we try to do a lot of control in modern farming. But I think there's a lot of approaches where you think it's okay. And this is especially relevant for Hokyoji, because we're getting ready to build a zendo, and we're doing plans, and we got to get estimation, you got to get permits, and you got to get the site graded. And so it certainly does feel like, although there's a little bit of contingency, it does feel like, well, I have plans here, and this is where the zendo is going to be, and this is where the Dokusan rooms are going to be. I'm going to give it to them, and there's the carpenters, and the carpenters are going to price it out, and this is how much it's going to cost. And there's, at least there feels to be, anybody who built a house, remodeled a house knows that there's not quite as much control as we might imagine. But still, as you're building a house, as you're putting something together, as you measure out your tape measure and something's 20 feet and you're just like, how many studs is that? And we're going to cut them up. And there does feel like sort of like, I can just put the pieces together. And there's farming. So farming, gardening, is a lot different. You can plan what seeds you're going to plant, but you can't guarantee they're going to sprout. Maybe the seeds were old. Maybe there was something I had put out tomato plants about a month ago now. And then I think about 3 weeks ago, we had an epic hailstorm. It was just epic. And it's like, what? Oh my gosh, what did it do? Luckily, everything survived. But one year, I had all my sunflowers growing, and we had a hurricane come through. We got the sort of tail end of it. Flattened everything. Sunflowers don't have very deep root structure, and it knocked them all over. We have just outside of town, there's a sort of farmer's market thing, and they do a big, huge sunflower maize thing. They do a corn one later, but they have the sunflowers. Flattened the entire field. So these are all things that they're sort of not in our control, and we sort of dust ourselves off. And we, you plant more seeds. I started some plants, and then I got busy, and they all sort of, they got sort of, they were burned up in the greenhouse. They might not have gotten as much water as they were supposed to. So now I got to go back to Maryland. I got to start some new seeds. But it's very much, it's a different mindset. It's a mindset of being a little bit more in tune with rhythms. And I think this sort of fits better with the idea of being in causes and conditions. Sometimes you hear, you talk about being dualistic, and it's really non-duality. I think it's a little more useful sometimes to think of things as being either in accord or discord with what's going on. You can either be in harmony or sort of out of step with what's going on. Because you start to try and control things, you start to try and keep things, jukai, push things away. And it's hard to do it in the moment. And even when you know it's going to cause you more grief later. But you still start to just do the clinging. So you sort of have these two maybe approaches, carpenters or farmers. I was trying to work hunter-gatherers in. I mean, let's even more in tune with nature, hunter-gatherers. We've been fed a lot of misinformation about hunter-gatherers. You know, like, it's like, well, hunter-gathering, they had to work all day. And it's like, well, no, actually they work less than agricultural societies do. And it's like, well, they had famine. And no, actually they had fewer famines than agricultural societies did. And so, yeah, I want my money back. But I think there's a lot of, we're sort of encouraged, certainly in the modern age, with technology and instrumentalism and stuff. And I think certainly Confucianism was this idea of like, we're gonna arrange society and we're gonna have all these rules. And I think, you know, the big three is all these big rules. And, you know, I even think secularism can have, you know, so we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And certainly then, you know, I think from the Zen and the Taoist and maybe some other of the other religions, it's more of a, let's be a little more in tune with the rhythms. And the rhythms are there everywhere. I love Hokyoji. I like the trees. Anyone who was here for the first sit, we had an epic thunderstorm. It was just like, it was like the crack of a cannon, and then the rain came down, and then it did it. But I feel the same way in New York City. Like just being there, getting off at Penn Station, getting off the train, and just seeing the mass of people all going about. It's just, to me, it's more of the same. But, so, you know, thinking of these two approaches, I think a lot of times, and again, there's planning with farms and gardening, and there's schedules fail with carpentry. Some things don't always happen exactly on time. But I think we can take these lessons into our lives and sort of think about how we're doing this. And I think the place to start is that we can think about these as when we sit zazen. So practice is practice. That's why they call it practice. And we can think of our zazen as being, you know, we even talk about cultivation. So it's more of a gardening situation when you're sitting zazen rather than a carpentry situation where I'm going to sit and I'm going to do the thing or not do the thing. It depends. I don't know how I feel about Dogen today. And just more like, oh, okay, yeah. I don't even have to worry about, except if you're the timekeeper, I don't have to worry about how long I'm sitting. I can just sit. I can just sit. I can just do the thing. It's just. And just find the rhythm of it. And yeah, that was the punchline. So we can open it up to discussion and talks. I was trying to watch my clock and I just simply lost it. That's not bad. It's exactly how long it's supposed to go. So, any questions? I see that there was a message from Kyoku who said that she had to attend to something. Good to see Bree. And I see Paul Winberg's name. And Mary and Laura and John. And poor Shinko Marilyn, who had a mishap. There's Hartman. and Rushin and Yud. It's Hollywood Squares. All right. Surely anything. Don't fail me, Rushin. No pressure.
I will take issue with your statement that worrying is not preparing. Because my mother basically taught me especially to worry. And because I can foresee possibly bad things happening, it prepares me to avoid those bad things happening. It also causes a lot of extra anxiety, I have to admit, but if you know about that that's your habit, you can have a certain distance to that habit. It's like, 98% of that stuff never happens, but it's an adventure. But I think worrying is a bit of preparing. So,
Well, so then we can just redefine that as preparing. I mean, you can think about the different ways things are going. I don't know if that's worry. I don't know. This may be too much. But so in the 80s, which was a little while ago, if you went to get an HIV test, it took you 2 weeks to get the results back. So everything was already set. And so worrying about it wasn't going to change anything. It couldn't prepare you for anything. But there you go. But I mean, it's hard because we're subject to causes and conditions. So the condition changed because I took a test. But it would be better if you could both take the test and not worry about it and go like, yeah, whatever it is, I'll deal with the result when it happens. But it's funny you say that. So 2 things I noticed. I try to stay off Facebook these days. I went on Facebook and my mom posted something. And so this is what made me think of it. My mom posted something that basically says, I'm a mom, I'm going to worry about you forever. And the second thing is somehow she's become a follower of Hokyoji, and she put a heart on my announcement for my Dharma talk today. So moms are always your moms. Anyone else? Anyone in the Zendo, the Zendo?
I think there's a difference between worry and like preparing based on perceived threat of some sort and rumination. And that's is the rumination's not useful. The stewing part.
Yeah, the part that keeps you up until 2 and 3, 4 in the morning.
I would also bring up the thing about gardening, is because plants in the spring, especially when they get that first rain and there's this burst of energy, and it's like they don't know what the rest of the year is going to be. They just go for it.
Yeah.
There's something to be learned from that, I think. And even yesterday, when we had storms coming through here, I noticed the peonies, as the clouds came in and it got darker and darker, they started closing up the flowers.
Yeah.
That's just nature at work. That's just something built in. So And then later the sun comes out and the flowers open up again. There's no, I'm sure there's some kind of, explanation for that, but it seems natural, right?
Mary.
Thank you so much for your Dharma talk. And can you say congratulations? Is that
Yeah.
a Buddhist? Hey, congratulations
Once.
on the transition. Two words that I really have come to hold on to that really have been part of what I've taken from Buddhist teachings and have been repeated, which make a lot of sense to me, because frankly, with our age of technology, I think we try to, I think, deny how powerfully this is a problem. The digital age. And we need to, I mean, for me, we need to accept it. It's great on the one hand, but man, it's a problem. So one of the things that I kind of go back to is not being swallowed up by what's going on. So I have just yesterday had a text from a close loved one who has had there was a terrible thing that happened to a friend of hers. I mean, terrible. And so my loved one, we were texting back and forth all day because she's just extremely stressed. And I love her. So I'm like a sponge. In a way, I start to soak up her her feelings of helplessness. She can't do anything, right now. So that's one thing the digital age throws at us. If you get texts from loved ones or emails or whatever, we're it's not just our own, it's everybody we love and are connected with. And then you go to the news, right? And then there's a whole nother layer. So I think it's a really, really important, it's just important to acknowledge that. So not getting swallowed up. And then the second thing, which is hard, I have to really sort of pause, but then to surrender to that moment, like yesterday, when I could text back my loved one some comforting words, but really understanding that I can't fix it. I cannot fix the pain. And I want to keep away from platitudes. So being swallowed up and surrendering. Yeah. I think that's all I have. That just brought up those two things from your talk that I was thinking about. Thank you.
It is hard at this time because I have relatives that's like, well, you need to be informed, but there's just so much information coming at you, or so much, data coming at you. Not all of it is information anymore. And it just sets you off and then goes everything. Yonan?
Thank you. Thank you. I was following up on what Mary was saying because, well, two things. One, for probably 20 years now, I've had off and on an elevated PSA, which means I might have prostate cancer or I might not. Who knows? And I have chosen not to worry about it. My primary care provider does for some reason, but I have chosen not to worry about it, and so far it's worked out pretty well that way. And I think that's one of the things that we can think about is, there's worrying and then there's choosing not to worry about it. But it's always in the back of my mind, but what's my next PSA going to be? Is it going to be okay? Is it not going to be okay? The other thing was, as Mary said, she got a text. I got an email from another member of the Great Tree Board of Directors. For some reason, she confided in me, and she revealed that she has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And she was all worried about it, and she was all frantic about it, and searching the internet and things like that. And I think one of the things that we can do for, people who are worrying about something is to try to give them some reassurance. Well, type 1 diabetes, yeah, it's an issue, but it's manageable. There's treatment, there's things you can do to protect yourself. I have a chronic disease as well, and it's manageable so far, more or less. And you just have to accept that. And that's basically, you talked about, Jushin, you talked about accepting, what's going on with you. And that's what I have to do with my chronic disease. I have to accept it. This is the way it's going to be. And I'm not going to be able to change it. I can help work with my physicians on mitigating it, but there's nothing else I can do about it. And I try to convey that to my spouse sometimes because he gets all worried. But I said, well, let's not worry about it until it happens, something like that. So that's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on what you were saying. And I appreciate your talk, and may I offer my congratulations as well.
Anyone from Zendo? John? You have to unmute yourself.
So interesting, the metaphors of the farming versus hunter-gatherer. I mean, both in a certain sense involve, the possibility of good things and bad things happen, right? I mean, there's neither one is predictable, so to speak, right? I mean, there's all the unknowingness in both ways of living in, using that metaphor of living in the world. So I'm just wondering, you mentioned kind of at the beginning of your talk, Jushin, about hunter-gatherers have gotten a bad reputation. So say a little bit more about that part about hunter-gatherer, about what do they have, so to speak, that the farmer metaphor does not. I mean, what's the...
So I was more the carpenter and the farmer.
Oh, okay.
So, but I was trying because it was, I think it's fairly certain that evolution stopped when the agricultural revolution started, that we became detached from evolution. So we still have a lot of our small social great ape characteristics, and those get us into trouble. So the typical one is like, we're very interested in, keeping people's behavior within acceptable bands. Like, there's a lot more reciprocity in a hunter-gatherer type situation. So where this shows up the most obviously is in traffic, somebody cuts in front of you, you honk at them. And the honking most of the time is like a signal of Like, you broke the rules.
Hmm.
But we're never going to see them again. They don't know who we are. We don't know the social relation. You know, it's just like, it's just hardwired into us. They're like, wait a minute, you need a tap here. You need a tap here. So that's sort of that part with the hunter-gatherer. But it's really more along the lines of, it's the carpenter and thinking that you can Tetris your way out of every situation, and it's like everything is like, well, the building is this wide, and we're going to pour the foundation, and yes, so this is the part I thought you were going for, is there are elements of the unforeseeable in building, as you well know, as head of the Zendo committee, and there are elements of planning in agriculture. You know, you've got to put out your seeds, and you don't put out your seedlings until after Mother's Day, although I don't know with global warming whether that's still true or not. But it used to be you didn't put your tomato plants and things out until after Mother's Day. But it's still a little bit more of the idea that you see this, Alan Watts talks about this tension between Confucianism and Taoism, and the way they sort of were approaching things as being fabricated. Like, we want to fix everything, we want to fabricate, we just, think, versus more like organic. And things are growing. And so I skipped my history talk today. I will pick up my history talk later, and I'll actually talk about how this influenced Buddhism to become Zen, but it is really kind of a different mindset. And I think that where we are in 2025, that the sort of oh yeah, we'll just fix it. There'll be technology to fix that. And we want to fix everything and fit everything and cut everything. And it's going to be the right size. And it's like you can't get rid of all of that. But in sort of the grand scheme of our lives, both the day to day and the whole thing, being of the world, the natural part's going to win out. And so, we just need to, it could be more skillful to be a little more in sync with that. I keep looking at the screen because I'm used to that camera, but I keep forgetting the camera's over here. But
All good.
there. Hopefully that makes a sense.
Thank you. And
Well,
congratulations.
Oh,
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you, sir. Are we done? All right. It is so wonderful to be with you all today. It's beautiful at Hokyoji. I hope it's beautiful. We have to do a few things, and then I got to get in the car and go back to Maryland. So it was great to see you all. It was great to be here. Everyone have a great Sunday.
Yeah.
And stay out of trouble.